Chapter 17, The Tremendous Truaxes. Come on, we want to show you something. Falling back into the past, really seeing another era for yourself, is a lot different than you've imagined it might be. If you ever looked at photographs from, say, the early 1970s, you might have the impression that everything was very dingy and yellowish. Of course, that's only due to the color qualities of the film stock used in that era. Or perhaps the photos were stored in an attic for decades, so the red and blue pigments faded away. Let's zip back 30 years to 1971. We're moving mainly in time now, hardly at all in space. It's a perfect, crisp fall day in the Midwest. The sky is pure azure, without a trace of that sickly yellow. The bright clouds are full and white as a new starched shirt. No fading, no hint of gray. Look down a bit further. The trees are emerald, malachite, Kelly dappled with sunlight. The leaves are just on the cusp of morphing into their brilliant autumn vermilions. Maybe one more week. The natural world is just as you know it from your own time. But if you look down even more, you'll see things that don't seem right. The past is a foreign country to you. The cars parked along the streets are alien, manufactured by companies that you don't recognize. Sure, there are the Fords and Chevys, but there are many others too. AMCs, Shelbys, Imperials, and Plymouths. They're big and bulky, heavy yet powerful looking. The hoods seem cartoonishly elongated, and the driver and passenger seats seem too far back, almost in the trunk. Headlights are almost uniformly round, rather than square or rectangular. Some of the cars have wood paneling running along their length, like someone was trying to pretend that these machines of steel and aluminum were carved from, of all things, trees. The colors are burnt orange, or olive, or brown. And they don't look old. They don't have license plates proclaiming their antique status. These cars are new. We're on the campus of Renault University, a public engineering and agriculture school in north-central Indiana. Students are strolling the streets near brick halls, lying in the grass, holding hands near a fountain. They look strange, otherworldly. Men have unruly facial hair. You can see thick mutton chop sideburns, long beards, and curious mustaches. They wear shirts of thick, heavy cloth, printed with swirling paisley patterns, or loud stripes. Vests, wide collars. Yes, there are bell-bottoms, but also blue jeans. Not in the same cut or style to which you are accustomed. Women wear skirts that are surprisingly short. Their hair is often long and straight. Center parts are common. Rock music is blasting from a large speaker wedged into a window of the nearby Wyndham Hall, a co-ed dormitory. A male singer howls about how good it feels to be wanted by some sweet little thing, backed with a pulsating guitar riff and thumping bass line. It's a song that is primarily lost to modern ears, as it hasn't been beaten to death by classic rock radio. There was more to music of that time than the 10 Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and Black Sabbath songs that everyone knows. The speaker is connected to a wood and aluminum turntable, atop which a slab of black vinyl is rotating lazily beneath the tone arm. And the smells? I know the one you're searching for. Yes, you can detect a hint of the dank, prickly scent of pot on the soft breeze. I mean, it's a Friday afternoon, classes are over, and it's time to unwind. But there's more. There is hot, oily asphalt, cigarettes, patchouli incense, hair cream, chamade perfume with its floral notes of jasmine and hyacinth, cheap beer in amber glass bottles, English leather cologne, smoke from a two-stroke engine, suntan lotion, burgers on a tiny grill, cooking over those small, hard charcoal briquettes. The students are talking. You overhear snatches of conversation. There is talk of love and war, of present worries and future plans, of cars, of classes, of girls, of boys. You could be forgiven if all this seems like quite a culture shock. Don't worry if you're somewhat queasy. The feeling will pass. Outside Wyndham's west entry, Gregory Truax rests beneath a gnarled ash tree, his girl Caroline Orton seated between his legs. She's leaning back into him, his arms around her stomach. She's tall, leggy. He's short and round. People wonder how they got together, being so physically mismatched as they are. Caroline had just broken up with Teddy, an engineering major, when Greg asked her out. Their friends knew it was just a rebound relationship. It would be over after a date or two, but here they were, 5 months later, and still going strong. The moment of truth is approaching, though. In the spring, Greg will be finishing his bachelor's degree in mathematics. He'll be graduating, and Caroline will still be here. She has 2 years left. He's going to have to make a decision. His grades are good. Finding a job won't be difficult, but he'll need to move. This college town is too small for the type of work he wants to do, which is game theory, unless he wants to slave away at the university until he rises through the ranks. Maybe earn a PhD? Become a professor? Nah. He likes the college atmosphere, but he wants to go places. Greg wants to get out of Indiana. Caroline is talking about Dr. Zane Bushnell, her literature professor. He had run into her earlier in the day and asked if she'd like to discuss some esoteric movement in literary theory with him over lunch. She insisted that it was a purely convivial meeting, but Greg was jealous. This sort of thing happened a lot. Caroline was popular on campus, and not only with her fellow students. Her instructors took note as well. And why shouldn't they? She was intelligent, hardworking, attractive. She grasped complex concepts quickly, and could discuss high-level ideas with ease. Professors in the Department of English would invite her to small gatherings of their brightest students, to chat and discuss the big social and literary problems of the day. She always made sure that Greg was invited along, but he could tell that the others didn't really want him there. They were from two different worlds, the literary versus the mathematical. Maybe he could get a master's degree. That would buy him some time until Caroline graduated. Then they could both go off somewhere. He could stick around for another couple of years. The dark half of his mind wondered what Caroline saw in him. Was she just biding her time? Was it a fling? Would he be cast aside as soon as someone taller, more handsome, more fascinating came along? Caroline stopped. I'm just going on. You don't really care about the whole new criticism movement, do you? I think we should talk about a ring, Greg blurted. Caroline had been thinking about this herself for some time now, but still his directness took her by surprise. Gregory was usually so intentional about everything, and that was one of the things she loved about him. He didn't talk all the time, but when he did speak, it was because he had something important to say. He spoke with reason and with rationality. He was so different from her classmates. Sure, he was geeky. Geeks were her favorite. Geeks treated her with respect. They didn't see her as just a sexy co-ed or simple arm candy, but as a woman with a real mind. And she appreciated his perspectives on things. The mathematical world was strict and rule-driven, but Greg could make it sound like poetry. The theorems and proofs could be beautiful when Greg talked about them. And she could tell that he was going places. He had a system. He would write out a list of the steps he would need to take in order to accomplish something, and then he would do them. And it worked out, just the way he had planned it. People who didn't know him like Caroline did might also be surprised to find out that he was a good lover as well. Greg was attentive to her needs, eager to please. He was cute, with thick curly hair and a mischievous smile. Maybe a little short, but that didn't bother her too much. Besides, there were always shoe lifts for him, and she didn't have to wear cork platform wedges or heels all the time. Caroline stretched out her hand and inspected the bare ring finger. I think a simple blue diamond would do nicely. Nothing too gaudy. What do you think? The wedding took place in Caroline's hometown church, First Lutheran of Broadacre. The reception was held in the church basement. It was simple, pleasant, not like the overly showy and expensive weddings of your own time. The colors were silver and seafoam green. The guests ate fried chicken from paper plates and danced to records. Afterward, the couple escaped in Gregory's old two-door that his parents had decorated with "Just Married" paint and metal cans tied to the bumper. They were off to Hawaii for a week-long honeymoon. The newly wedded Mr. and Mrs. Truax finished their degrees and were preparing to leave the state in order to blaze their own paths in life when Caroline's mother fell ill. Testing eventually revealed it to be cancer. Caroline felt obligated to stick around and take care of her, as her father had passed a number of years ago. Gregory took a job as a math teacher at Broadacre High. They bought a house. They made friends and connections. The moment of youthful adventurousness passed them by, to be replaced with a morass of comfort and familiarity. When Caroline's mother succumbed at last, the impulse to leave had vanished, and they decided to make Broadacre their home. Zoom ahead. After several years of marriage, Caroline and Gregory decided to have a child. We'll continue to speed on past the actual conception part, because no one wants to watch their parents having sex. 9 months later, Holden Zane Truax was born. There are many reasons that couples decide to have a child. Some people want their genes to live on through progeny, and thus become immortal in a way. Some want to feel the deep love and bond between a parent and child. Others think that having a child will shore up a rocky marriage, or add some spice to a marriage that has become stale. Still others feel that they missed out on something in childhood, and want to live vicariously through offspring. Or they think that they have much wisdom to impart, and that, through their guidance, the child might grow up to be someone important. Gregory and Caroline Truax wanted a child for all of these reasons. They were growing older and thinking of their own mortality. Caroline was feeling a deep biological need for the love of a tiny baby. And it wasn't that the marriage was bad necessarily, it was just flat. It needed something. Something to spice things up. Something to provide new experiences and challenges. And, said Gregory, you never know. He might just grow up to be the president. This was far enough back that people still aspired to become president of the United States. Caroline smiled. Maybe let's start out with mayor. I'd be happy with that. You could teach him to be a famous novelist. Or a doctor, replied Caroline. Maybe he'll grow up to cure cancer. We'll make sure he's so well-rounded. You've got the logical, mathematical side of things covered, and I've got the empathetic, artistic side. Hey, wait, I've got an empathetic, artistic side, too. Of course you do, dear. They loved their baby, coddled him, taught him. They tried to give him all the best, and impart as much wisdom as they could. Were they disappointed that Zane grew up and didn't find major success? That his life had no focus? That he couldn't overcome his mental issues? That he lived in a garbage house, drank too much, and got hit by a car? We don't have to look for those answers right now. Some things are too difficult. Some things need more time and perspective. However, the point of all this is that it's hard to really believe, deep down, without seeing it for yourself, that the world did truly exist before you were born, and it just keeps right on going after you die. Everyone has their own perspective, their own dreams and wants. The ability to perceive, the level of consciousness that people have while they're alive, is constrained to such a narrow band. But now we're free. All of the connections are laid bare. And since learning these things, we can tell you this. Even though we cannot directly impact events in the world of the living, it's still possible to have an influence. We'll show you.